I found a GPS tracker hidden inside a $15 Christmas tree stand I bought off Craigslist. The seller had planted it there to find out where I lived. By the time I discovered it and smashed it to pieces, it was already too late. He knew exactly where to find me, and 3 days later, I discovered just how close he'd gotten while I slept. This is the story of how a simple Christmas decoration nearly cost me my life, and it starts with me being broke, alone, and desperate to feel some holiday cheer. If this story sends chills down your spine, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because trust me, it only gets worse from here. You know how in college you try to convince yourself that you are an adult, but you are actually just a broke kid playing house. That was me 3 years ago. I was a junior living off campus in a drafty rental house with 2 other guys, Mark and Steve. But since they had both flown home early for the holidays, I was alone for the week leading up to Christmas. I decided I wanted to stay in the college town until the 24th to work some extra shifts at the warehouse where I had a part-time job. I figured I'd make some extra cash, drive home to my parents on Christmas Eve, and feel productive. But being alone in that big empty rental house got depressing fast. To cheer myself up, I bought a real Christmas tree. It was a monster and 8-foot Douglas fir that I got for dirt cheap because it had a bald spot on the back. I dragged it into the living room, feeling proud until I realized I had a problem. I didn't have a stand. The plastic one we had in the basement was cracked, and this tree was heavy. If I let go of it, it would topple over and smash the window. I checked Amazon, but shipping wouldn't get here in time. I went to Home Depot, but the heavy-duty metal stands were like $60. I had $40 in my checking account to last me 3 days. So I did what every broke college student does. I went on Craigslist. It was the 23rd of December. The for sale section was mostly junk, but then I saw it. A post titled Vintage Cast Iron Tree Stand. Heavy duty, $15. The photo showed one of those old school green metal stands with the red screws, the kind that could hold up a telephone pole. It was perfect. I texted the number immediately, "Hey, is the stand still available? Can I pick it up tonight?" The reply came 2 minutes later. "Yes, come now. I am at this place. I'll be up for a bit." I mapped the address. It was in a subdivision called Oak Haven, about 20 minutes away on the edge of town. It was a nice area, mostly families and retirees safe. I texted back, "On my way." I hopped in my beat-up Honda Civic. It was bitterly cold that night, the kind of cold that hurts your face. There was about 4 inches of old crunchy snow on the ground from a storm earlier in the week. When I turned into Oak Haven, the vibe was weirdly quiet. Most houses had their Christmas lights, blazing inflatable Santa Clauses, icicle lights, the works. But as I got closer to the pin on my GPS, the street got darker. The seller's house was the only one on the block with absolutely no decorations, no lights, no wreath, nothing. Even the street lamp in front of his driveway seemed to be flickering out. The house was a split level with beige siding, totally dark except for one dim yellow light coming from a back room. I parked on the street. I remember sitting there for a second, feeling a pit in my stomach. It wasn't panic, just that primal instinct telling me something was off. But I ignored it. It was a $15 stand, and I needed to get my tree up. I walked up the driveway. It hadn't been shoveled. The snow was packed down into ice, like someone had been walking back and forth but never cleared it. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I waited, shivering in my thin jacket. I rang it again. Finally, the inner door opened. Through the glass storm door, I saw him. He was an older guy, maybe in his 60s. He wore a stained gray sweater and thick glasses that magnified his eyes. He didn't smile, he just unlocked the storm door and pushed it open a crack. "For the stand?" he asked. His voice was raspy, like he hadn't used it in days. "Yeah," I said, reaching into my pocket. "I got the $15 right here." He didn't take the money. He just stared at me, then looked past me at my car, then back at me. "It is in the basement," he said. "It is too heavy for me to carry up the stairs with my back. You gotta come down and get it." Now, I am not a big guy. I am maybe 5'9" on a good day. This guy was older, but he was big, broad shoulders, and the way he said it, it wasn't a request, it was a demand. "Oh," I said, stepping back slightly, is there anyone else home who can help? I don't really want to trek snow into your house." "My wife is asleep," he lied. I knew he was lying. The house was dead silent. There was a smell drifting out of the open door, musty, like old newspapers and stale cigarettes. "Just take your shoes off, come on. I want to make sure it fits your tree before you take it. I got a trunk down there we can test it with." "It is fine, really," I said, my heart starting to thump against my ribs. "I'll take the risk. If it doesn't fit, I am only out $15. Can you just point me to the stairs?" "No," he snapped. He sounded angry now. "You need to see it. Just come in." He opened the door wider. He stepped back into the shadows of the hallway, gesturing for me to enter. "I am actually in a rush," I said, my voice shaking a little. "Tell you what, I'll give you 20. Keep the change." "Just bring it here." He stared at me for a long, uncomfortable 5 seconds. His eyes looked wet and manic behind those glasses. He was calculating something. Finally, he let out a huff of annoyance. "Wait here," he grumbled. He disappeared into the dark hallway. I heard heavy footsteps going down wooden stairs. I stood there on the porch, ready to bolt. I kept my hand on the handle of the storm door, making sure it didn't latch shut. A minute later, he reappeared, breathing hard, lugging the green metal stand. He dropped it on the floor of the entryway with a loud clank. "Here," he said. I handed him the $20 bill through the crack in the door. He snatched it. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say Merry Christmas. He just watched me. I grabbed the stand. It was surprisingly heavy, maybe 20 pounds, and turned around. "Hey," he called out. I froze. I turned back. "You got a nice car," he said. I looked at my rusted Civic. Thanks. You live on campus?" "No," I said stupidly. Then I caught myself. Yeah, in the dorms. Way across town. He didn't blink. "Drive safely." I practically ran to my car. I threw the stand in the passenger seat and peeled out of there. I watched in my rearview mirror until I turned the corner. He was still standing in the doorway watching me leave. By the time I got home, the adrenaline had faded. I felt silly. It was just a grumpy old man. I was letting my imagination run wild. I hauled the stand inside and locked the front door. The house was quiet. I dragged the tree over and laid it on its side. The stand was vintage, covered in chipped green paint. I started loosening the red screws to make room for the trunk. As I was wrestling the stand onto the bottom of the tree, something rattled. It sounded like a loose screw inside one of the hollow metal legs. I shook the stand. It was annoying. I figured a piece of metal had broken off inside. I turned the stand upside down to see if I could shake it out. There was no hole, but on the bottom of one leg, there was a strip of black electrical tape. It looked new. Frowning, I peeled the tape back. Inside the hollow leg, jammed tight against the metal, was a small black square. It wasn't a piece of scrap metal, it was a device. I used a screwdriver to pry it out. It fell into my hand. It was a GPS tracker, a Tile Pro, and the little light on it was blinking. My blood ran cold. I stood there in my living room, holding this thing. Why would a Christmas tree stand have a GPS tracker? You don't lose a tree stand. You don't take it for walks. There was only one reason to put a tracker in something you are selling to a stranger, to find out where they live. Before I tell you what I did next, do me a favor. Drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in this situation. Would you have called the cops immediately? Destroyed it? Let me know, because what I did next might have saved my life. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. My first instinct was to destroy it. I threw it on the floor and smashed it with the heel of my boot until the plastic shattered and the battery rolled out. I scooped up the pieces, ran to the bathroom, and flushed them down the toilet. I sat on the edge of the tub, breathing hard. He knows where I am, but then logic tried to take over. I told myself, maybe he put it there for something else, and forgot. Maybe he was tracking his own storage boxes. It was a stretch, but I didn't want to believe the alternative. I checked all the locks in the house. I made sure the windows were shut. I put a chair under the doorknob of the front door. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with a baseball bat, watching Netflix, jumping at every creak the house made. The next morning, Christmas Eve, the sun finally came out. Everything felt safer in the daylight. I told myself I was being paranoid. I finished setting up the tree, though. Looking at that stand made me nauseous around 10 a.m. I went into the kitchen to make coffee. The kitchen window looks out over the backyard, which is fenced in. I dropped my mug. It shattered on the floor, coffee splashing everywhere. The backyard was covered in pristine, smooth snow except for one set of tracks. Someone had climbed over the back fence. The boot prints were large and heavy. They walked in a straight line from the fence right up to the kitchen window, and there the snow was packed down hard. Someone had stood there, right outside the glass for a long time. The tracks didn't go back to the fence. They went around the side of the house toward the street. I called the police immediately. 2 officers came out. I showed them the stand door, where the tracker used to be, told them about the Craigslist guy, and showed them the footprints. They were polite but dismissive. "Look, son," the older officer said, "we can file a report for trespassing, but without a name or a license plate, there is not much we can do. The guy on Craigslist probably used a burner phone. The footprints, well, it could be anyone cutting through yards. He put a tracker in the stand," I argued. "Which you flushed down the toilet," the officer pointed out. "We have no evidence. Just keep your doors locked. If you see him again, call 911. They left. I felt helpless. I wasn't going to just sit there. I drove to Best Buy and blew the rest of my money, plus my credit card on a security system. I bought 3 Wyze cameras. I set one up facing the front door, one facing the back door, and one in the living room pointing at the tree in the main hallway. I connected them to my phone. I felt a little better. If he came back, I'd have him on video. Christmas passed. Nothing happened. I went to work. I came home. I stared at my phone. The seller's Craigslist ad had been deleted. The number he'd texted me from was disconnected. He had ghosted by the 28th of December. I started to relax. Maybe the footprints were just a coincidence. Maybe a neighbor cutting through the yard that night. My friend Dave called me. "Dude, you've been a hermit all week," Dave said. "Come out. We're going to grab burgers and drinks at Kevin's, my treat." I hesitated. I didn't want to leave the house, but I also felt like I was going crazy being cooped up alone. "Fine," I said, "but I am not staying out late." I left the house at 8 p.m. I double-locked the door. I checked the camera feed on my phone. Everything was clear. I met Dave and a few others. We ate, laughed, and for a few hours, I forgot about the creepy old man and the tracker. It felt good to be normal again. Around 11:30 p.m., I decided to head home. I pulled into my driveway. At 11:50 p.m., my heart stopped. The front door of the house was wide open. Not just unlocked, it was kicked in. The door jamb was splintered, and the door was hanging off the top hinge, swinging slightly in the wind. I didn't go in. I threw the car in reverse and backed out into the street, locking my doors. I called 911. Someone had broke in. I screamed at the dispatcher. "I am in the car outside." The police arrived in 5 minutes. It was the same officers as before. They drew their guns and went inside. I waited by my car, shaking so bad I couldn't hold my phone. After 10 minutes, they came out. "House is clear," one shouted. "You can come in." I walked inside. The place was a disaster. It wasn't just a robbery, it was a rampage. The Christmas tree was tipped over. Ornaments were shattered everywhere. The couch cushions were slashed open. The television was smashed. "Check your valuables," the officer said. I ran to my room. My MacBook Pro was gone from my desk. The envelope where I kept my emergency cash, about $500, was gone from my drawer. "He took my laptop and my cash," I told them. "Standard burglary," the officer said, writing it down. "Probably saw you leave and took the opportunity." "No," I said. "It is the guy with a tree stand. We'll look into it." They said in that tone that meant we have no leads. But they were wrong. I had the cameras. While the police were dusting for prints and finding nothing, he wore gloves. I sat on the ruined couch and opened the Wyze app on my phone. I went to the Events tab. There was a notification, motion detected. Living room, 8:45 p.m., 45 minutes after I'd left for dinner. I clicked play. The video loaded. The footage was in grainy night vision, but it was clear enough. The front door flew open with a violent crash. A figure stepped in. It was him, Gary the seller. He was wearing the same stained sweater, but now he had a black ski mask rolled up onto his forehead, exposing his face. He was wearing leather gloves, and in his right hand he was gripping a metal baseball bat. He didn't look at the television. He didn't look for cash. He walked straight into the center of the room and stood there listening. He was perfectly still. Then he screamed. It wasn't a word. It was just a guttural roar of rage. He started swinging the bat. He smashed the lamp. He smashed the coffee table. Then, and this is the part that haunts me, he stopped smashing things. He started searching, but he wasn't searching for valuables. He walked over to the couch and stabbed the bat into the cushions, as if checking if someone was hiding under them. He walked down the hallway to my bedroom. I switched camera feeds to the one I'd pointed at the back door, which caught a slice of the hallway. He went into my room. I couldn't see inside, but I could hear the audio. He was destroying my bed. He came back out a minute later. He was breathing hard. He looked confused. He looked disappointed. He walked back into the living room. He stood directly in front of the camera I'd hidden on the bookshelf. He didn't see the lens, but he looked right through me. "Where are you?" he said. The microphone picked it up clearly. He paced around the room for another 10 minutes. He just waited. He was waiting for me to come home. It was only when he checked the window and saw the neighbor's lights flicker that he seemed to decide to leave. He grabbed the MacBook and the cash on his way out, almost like an afterthought. Like he needed to make it look like a robbery. I showed the footage to the cops. Their attitude changed instantly. They saw the bat. They heard the whisper. This wasn't a burglar. This was a predator who had walked into a trap that I wasn't in. They identified him quickly from the video. His name wasn't Gary. It was a guy named Arthur Vance. He had a record, aggravated assault, stalking, and a history of breaking and entering. He'd been released from prison 6 months prior. They put out a warrant. They went to the house in Oak Haven. It was empty. It turned out he didn't own it. It was a foreclosure that had been sitting empty for 2 years. He'd broken in, changed the locks, and was squatting there. He used the address to bait people from Craigslist. They found a workshop in the basement. There were dozens of items down there. Lamps, chairs, tools, all tagged with prices, ready to be listed. And in the corner of the basement, they found a heavy metal chair with zip ties attached to the arms and legs. That was why he wanted me to come downstairs. If I had gone into that basement on the 23rd of December to check the fit, I never would have come back up. The police searched for Arthur Vance for months. They found his car, ditched in a ravine 2 towns over, but they never found him. I moved out the next day. I dropped out of that college and transferred to a school 3 states away. I couldn't sleep in that town anymore. I still have the video saved on my phone. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I watch it. I watch him standing in my living room, gripping that baseball bat, whispering, "Where are you?" I know he is still out there. And every Christmas, when I see people buying things off Craigslist to save a few bucks, I want to scream at them, "Save your money. Buy it from a store, because you never know who's waiting for you in the basement." I work mall security, and on Christmas Eve last year, I watched a man die on my security cameras. But I didn't know it yet. I saw someone sitting in Santa's chair at 2 a.m., went to investigate, and when I got there, the chair was empty but still warm. I thought the intruder had fled. I was wrong. He was still inside with me, and beneath that Santa chair, stuffed under the platform, was a dead body. The killer had been sitting right above his victim, staring into my camera, watching me watch him. If you are visiting this channel for the first time, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this story is about to get a whole lot darker. I've worked in security for about 4 years now. Most people think it is an exciting job, like you are chasing bad guys and tackling shoplifters every day. The reality is totally different. It is 99% boredom and 1% weirdness. Especially when you work the graveyard shift at a dying mall. This happened last year, on the night of the 23rd of December, bleeding into the early morning of Christmas Eve. I was the only guard on duty. The mall I work at, which I won't name for legal reasons, is one of those older ones that is slowly losing business to Amazon. The owners are cheap. They cut the security budget in half last year. That meant no partner for me. And worst of all, they stopped paying for the cloud storage for the security cameras. The cameras still worked, and I could see everything live on the office monitors. But nothing was recorded. If I didn't see it happen in real time, it didn't happen. It was 1:55 a.m. The mall had been locked down. Since 10 p.m. the cleaning crew had already finished and left. It was just me, a radio that nobody was listening to, and about 2 million square feet of empty retail space. I was sitting in the security office, which is tucked away at the end of a long hallway behind the food court. I was fighting to stay awake, drinking lukewarm coffee and staring at the wall of monitors. The mall is creepy at night. During the day, it is full of noise and light and people, but at night, they dim the lights to save power. The mannequins in the store windows cast long shadows that look like people standing still. The HVAC system makes these groaning sounds that echo through the corridors. I was doing my routine monitor patrol, just clicking through the different camera feeds. Cam 1, North Entrance, clear. Cam 2, Food Court, clear. Cam 3, Loading Dock, clear. Then I clicked on Cam 4, the center courts. Since it was Christmas, the center court was taken over by Santa's Village. You know, the setup fake snow, a little wooden house, giant candy canes, and a bunch of animatronic elves that move and paint toys. In the middle of it all was the big red velvet throne where the mall Santa sits. At night, they turned the animatronics off, so on the black and white monitor, the elves were all slumped forward, frozen in weird positions. They looked dead. I was about to click to the next camera when I froze. Someone was sitting in the Santa chair. My heart did that weird flutter thing. I leaned closer to the screen, squinting. The camera resolution wasn't great, but it was clear enough. There was a figure slumped in the big red throne. They were wearing dark clothes, a heavy hoodie, and baggy pants. They weren't moving. They were just sitting there right in the center of the display, staring straight ahead. My first thought was that it was a prank. Sometimes teenagers hide in the bathrooms before we lock up so they can run around the mall at night and make TikTok videos. I grabbed my radio and my heavy flashlight. I wasn't scared yet, just annoyed. I didn't want to deal with paperwork on Christmas Eve. "Security to Central," I said into the radio, purely out of habit even though no one was listening. "I have a 10 to 10 intruder in Santa's village, investigating now." I left the office and stepped out into the main corridor. The silence hit me immediately. If you've never been in a mall alone at 2 a.m., you can't understand how loud your own footsteps are. The sound bounced off the tiled floors and the glass storefronts. I walked past the darkened gap, past the shuttered pretzel stand. The air was cold. They turned the heat down at night, and I could see my breath a little. As I got closer to the center court, I unclipped the pepper spray from my belt. We aren't allowed to carry guns, which always made me nervous. I rounded the corner past the escalator. "Hey!" I shouted, shining my flashlight beam toward the village. "Mall security, you are trespassing." My voice echoed, ringing in my ears. I aimed the light at the big red chair. It was empty. I stopped walking. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. I knew what I saw. I had stared at that screen for 10 seconds. There was a person in that chair. I walked slowly into the display, stepping over the fake plastic snow. The animatronic elves looked even worse up close. Their painted eyes seemed to be watching me. One of them was stuck halfway through a hammering motion. Its arm raised like it was about to strike something. I walked up to the throne. "Is anyone here?" I called out. Silence. Just the low hum of the vending machines nearby. I reached out and touched the red velvet seat of the chair. It was warm. It wasn't hot, but it was definitely warmer than the cold plastic armrests. Someone had been sitting here seconds ago. "Come out," I yelled, spinning around with my flashlight. "I know you are here. The cops are on the way." That was a lie. I hadn't called them yet. I started searching. I looked behind the fake wooden house. I checked behind the giant stack of fake presents. Nothing. Then I noticed something near the back of the display where the fake snow met the real tile floor. There were wet footprints. There were faint dirty smears on the white tiles. They led away from the chair, past the elves, and down the hallway toward the south exit and the service corridors. I followed them. My grip on the flashlight was so tight my knuckles were white. The footprints faded after 20 feet, but the direction was clear. They were heading for the back maintenance halls. I pushed through the employees' only double doors. The hallway behind the stores is concrete, ugly, and dimly lit. "Hello," I said. I walked all the way to the end of the hall, toward the loading bay delivery door. The door was wide open. The heavy metal door was propped open with a brick. The cold night wind was blowing in, swirling some dead leaves across the concrete floor. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. They left. I walked over, kicked the brick away, and slammed the door shut. I locked it and double-checked the deadbolt. I pulled out my phone and called Greg, the mall manager. He picked up on the fourth ring, sounding groggy. "Yeah, what is it, Greg?" "It is Michael. I had an intruder. Saw him on the monitor in the Santa chair. By the time I got there, he was gone. Found the south loading door propped open. I think he bolted when he heard me coming." "Greg, did he steal anything? Any store windows smashed?" "Not that I can see. I think it was just a homeless guy looking for a warm place to sleep." "All right," Greg said. "Just log it in the report. Don't call the cops unless there is damage. I don't want the owners panicking over a hobo on Christmas. Just do an extra round and make sure he didn't let anyone else in." "Okay, Merry Christmas, Greg." "Yeah, sure." He hung up. I did what he said. I walked the entire perimeter of the mall. I checked every bathroom, every changing room, every service corridor. The place was empty. I went back to the security office and sat down. I watched the monitors like a hawk for the rest of the night. Every time I looked at Cam for Santa's village, I got a sick feeling in my stomach. But the chair remained empty. My shift ended at 7 a.m. when the morning guard, Dave, showed up. I told him about the incident. "Probably just old Joe," Dave laughed. "He tries to sneak in every winter. I'll keep an eye out." I went home exhausted. I told myself I was overreacting. It was just a guy. He ran away. End of story. I slept for a few hours, then got up to go to my parents' house for Christmas Eve dinner. But first, I had to stop by the mall to pick up my paycheck, which Greg had left in the office for me. When I pulled into the mall parking lot at 3 p.m., my stomach dropped. There were police cars everywhere, at least 4 cruisers and an ambulance, parked right in front of the main entrance. The lights were flashing, reflecting off the glass doors. I parked my car and ran toward the entrance. There was yellow tape across the sliding doors. I saw Dave standing outside, talking to a police officer. He looked pale, like sheet white. Pale Dave. I ducked under the tape. What is going on? Dave looked at me, his eyes wide. Michael, dude, you need to talk to these guys. A detective in a long coat stepped forward. Are you the night guard? Yeah, I said. What happened? Did the guy come back? Come with me, the detective said. He led me inside. The mall was closed. Shoppers were pressing their faces against the glass outside, trying to see in. We walked toward the center court. You reported an intruder at 2 a.m., the detective said. You said he fled through the south exit. Yeah, I said. I saw him in the chair, then he was gone. I found the door open. We reached Santa's village. There were evidence markers everywhere. A team of forensic people was taking photos near the fake wooden house, and there right next to the Santa chair was a black body bag. We found him about 2 hours ago, the detective said. One of the cleaning ladies saw a boot sticking out from under the platform that the chair sits on. Whoever it was, they shoved him underneath the display. Underneath, I felt dizzy, but I checked the area. He was jammed deep in there, the detective said. He unzipped the top of the bag just a few inches. I looked. It was a man I recognized vaguely, a homeless guy I'd seen panhandling near the highway exit. He looked peaceful except for the dried blood matted in his beard. Stabbed, the detective said grimly. Multiple times we found a hunting knife in the trash can over by the pretzels. I tried to piece it together so he broke in. I scared him off, but he waited, the detective interrupted. Was he dead? I asked. The detective looked at me seriously. Son, the coroner's here. Based on the body temperature and rigor mortis, this man has been dead since at least midnight, maybe earlier. I stopped breathing. The sounds of the mall faded out. Midnight. That is impossible. Why? Because I stammered. Because I saw him. I saw him sitting in that chair at 2 a.m. I saw him sitting up. The detective frowned. You sure about that? Could it have been a pile of clothes? Shadows? No, I insisted. It was a person. He was sitting right there. Then the realization hit me like a physical punch to the gut. If the homeless man had been dead and stuffed under the platform since midnight, then the person I saw sitting in the chair at 2 a.m. wasn't the homeless man. It was the killer. The killer was sitting in the Santa chair in the dark right above the body of the man he just murdered. He was sitting there, staring directly into the camera lens, staring at me. The cameras, the detective said, snapping his fingers. We need the footage. If we can get a face, we can nail this guy. I felt like I was going to throw up. I can't. What do you mean you can't? You said you saw him on the monitor. It is live view only, I said, my voice cracking. The owners don't pay for recording. There is no tape. There is no server. It is gone. The detective cursed and kicked at the floor. But the scariest part wasn't the dead body. It wasn't even the fact that the killer got away because of cheap landlords. It was the timeline. I saw the man in the chair. I walked down there. It took me maybe 3 minutes. When I got there, the chair was empty and warm. I found the back door open. I assumed he ran out. But the police said the back door had no prints on it except mine. And the snow outside that door, it was fresh. No footprints leading out into the parking lot. The killer didn't leave when I came down to investigate. He didn't run out the back door. He had opened the door to make me think he had left. Let me know in the comments if you've ever worked security or retail late at night. Did you ever experience anything like this? Drop your stories below. When I was standing there in Santa's village, shining my flashlight around, shouting for him to come out, he was still there. He was probably hiding behind the animatronic elves, or crouching in the shadows of the food court. Watching me touch the warm chair, he watched me lock the door. He watched me do my rounds. He was inside with me for the rest of the night. They never caught the guy. There was no DNA, no fingerprints, no footage. Just a dead homeless man and a security guard who has nightmares every Christmas Eve. I quit the next day. I work at a toll booth now. It pays less, but at least I can see everyone who comes and goes. Last Christmas Eve, 3 masked strangers tried to break into my house while I was home alone. They knew my name. They knew I worked at the office. They knew exactly when my husband would be gone. And when the police finally arrested them, they discovered the man leading the attack wasn't a random burglar. He was someone I saw every single day at work. Someone who had been watching me for months, planning this night down to the last detail. This is the story of the Christmas I almost didn't survive. People always say that Christmas is the most wonderful time of the year. They talk about the lights, the family dinners, and that warm, fuzzy feeling of safety. But for me, I don't think I'll ever look at a Christmas tree or a snowy night the same way again. I know that sounds dramatic, but after what happened last year, I think I have the right to be a little paranoid. It was the 24th of December, Christmas Eve. My husband Mark is an ER nurse, and unfortunately accidents don't take a holiday. He drew the short straw and had to work the overnight shift at the hospital. Leaving at around 9 p.m., I wasn't thrilled about being alone on Christmas Eve, but we had done our gift exchange early that morning, and I had our golden retriever, Barnaby, to keep me company. We live in a decent-sized house in a suburb that is usually very quiet. Our house is at the end of a cul-de-sac, backed up against a small patch of woods. It is great for privacy, but terrible when you are home alone and your mind starts playing tricks on you. After Mark left, I locked the front door deadbolt and handle and checked the back sliding glass door. I am a creature of habit. I double-checked the windows, turned on the alarm system, and settled onto the couch with a glass of wine to watch a movie. Barnaby was curled up on the rug, snoring softly. Everything was normal. For the first 2 hours, the wind was howling a little outside, rattling the gutters, but that is standard for winter. At exactly 11:14 p.m., my phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a notification from our doorbell camera. Person detected at front door. I frowned. We weren't expecting anyone. It was late for a delivery, and definitely too late for neighbors to be dropping off cookies. I paused the movie. The silence in the house suddenly felt very heavy. I picked up my phone and opened the app. The video feed took a second to load, the little buffering circle spinning. When the image finally popped up, my stomach dropped. Standing on my porch was a person. They were dressed as a caroler, like fully committed to the costume. They had on a long red Victorian-style coat, a top hat, and a thick scarf wrapped around their face, so only their eyes were visible, but they weren't singing, they weren't moving. They were just standing there, staring directly at the camera lens. My first thought was that it was a prank. Teenagers in the neighborhood messing around. I waited for them to ring the doorbell or run away laughing. But 10 seconds passed. Then 20, they stood perfectly still, like a statue. The night vision on the camera made their eyes look like two hollow black pits. I decided to nip it in the bud. I pressed the talk button on the app. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound annoyed rather than scared. "It is after 11, please leave." There was a delay in the audio. I heard my own voice echo slightly from the porch speaker outside. The figure didn't flinch. They didn't look down at the ground or shuffle their feet. They just kept staring at the camera. It was unnerving. It felt like they were looking through the camera right at me sitting on my couch. "I am serious," I said, my voice shaking a little now. "I am calling the police if you don't leave." Nothing. I closed the app and dialed the non-emergency line for the local police. I felt silly calling 911 for someone standing on a porch, but my gut was telling me something was wrong. While I was on hold, the house was dead silent. Then I heard it. Tap, tap. It wasn't coming from the front door. It was coming from the kitchen, at the back of the house. I froze. Barnaby woke up, lifting his head. His ears perked up. The tapping came again, a little louder this time. It was the sound of a fingernail, or a ring hitting the glass of the sliding back door. I didn't go to the kitchen. I didn't want them to see me. I opened the security app again and switched to the backyard camera view. I nearly dropped my phone. There were 3 more of them. They were dressed in similar dark coats, but they weren't wearing scarves. They were wearing masks. They looked like cheap plastic masks you'd buy at a dollar store. Clear plastic with exaggerated smiling female faces and roughed cheeks. The night vision made the masks look distorted and ghostly. 2 of them were standing a few feet back in the snow. The third one, a tall, broad man, was standing right against the glass door. I watched on the screen as he reached out and slowly, deliberately pressed down on the door handle. He was testing it. Thank God I had checked the lock. The handle didn't budge. The man in the mask leaned closer to the glass. He put his face right up to the pane, his plastic forehead resting against the door. He wasn't looking inside blindly. He was looking for me. I hung up the non-emergency line and dialed 911 immediately. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. 911, what is your emergency? People are trying to break into my house, I whispered, sliding off the couch and crawling behind the kitchen island so I couldn't be seen from the back door. There is 1 at the front and 3 at the back. They're wearing masks. Okay, ma'am, I have your location. Officers are dispatched. Are you in a safe place? I am in the kitchen. No, I am in the living room. I am hiding. Is the house locked? Yes, but they're testing the doors. While I was talking to the dispatcher, I heard a voice. It wasn't coming from the phone. It was coming from the backyard. It was muffled through the double-pane glass, but it was loud enough to hear. Sophie. My blood ran cold. They knew my name. This wasn't a random robbery. Random burglars don't call you by your first name. Barnaby was standing up now, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The hair on his back was standing straight up. The voice called out again. It was a man's voice, calm and flat. Open the door, Sophie. We know you are in there. We missed you at the office party. The office party, I felt like I was going to throw up. I work at a mid-sized logistics firm. We'd had our Christmas party 2 days ago. It was a standard corporate event. I couldn't think of anyone there who would do this. Who are they? The dispatcher asked. Do you know them? They know me, I stammered, tears streaming down my face. They said they missed me at the office party. Please, are the police close? They're 3 minutes out, Sophie. Stay on the line with me. Bang. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. I screamed. On the camera feed, I saw the man at the back door recoil. He had kicked the door. The glass held, but the frame shuttered. They're kicking the door, I yelled. Get to a room with a lock, the dispatcher commanded. Go now. I scrambled up, grabbing Barnaby's collar to pull him with me, but he wouldn't move. He was staring at the back door, teeth bared, barking ferociously. I had never heard him bark like that before. It wasn't a warning bark. It was an I am going to kill you bark. Bang, another kick. I heard the sound of splintering wood. The lock was giving way. I didn't have time to run upstairs. The only room with a lock on this floor was the small powder room off the hallway. I ran into it, locking the flimsy door behind me. I could still hear everything. Barnaby, come here, I screamed, but he stayed in the living room. I heard the glass shatter. It was the loudest sound I've ever heard. The massive pain of the sliding door crashing onto the kitchen tile. The cold winter air rushed into the house. I could feel the draft even under the bathroom door. Sophie. The voice was inside the house now. Where are you hiding, Sophie? I pressed myself against the furthest wall of the tiny bathroom, clamping my hand over my mouth to stop my sobbing. The dispatcher was still talking in my ear, telling me officers were pulling onto the street, but it felt too late. Then I heard the growl turn into a roar. Barnaby. I heard the heavy thud of a 70-pound dog launching himself. There was a shout of surprise. Not the calm voice from before, but a scream of pain. Get the dog off. There was a chaotic struggle. Things were breaking, lamps, chairs. I heard heavy boots stomping on the hardwood, the sound of fabric tearing, and Barnaby's vicious snarling, "Shoot it, shoot the dog," one of them yelled. My heart stopped. If they had guns, it was over. But then sirens. Not the distant wail, but the immediate right outside the front door. Blue and red lights flashed through the crack under the bathroom door. Polis. Drop it. I heard a megaphone boom from the front yard. The chaos inside the house shifted. The intruders weren't advancing anymore. They were panicking. I heard running footsteps, stumbling over the broken glass in the kitchen, heading back out into the backyard. They're running to the woods. A police officer shouted from inside my living room. I stayed in the bathroom for another 5 minutes, shaking so hard I couldn't stand up until a female officer knocked gently on the door. Sophie, it is Officer Miller. The house is clear. You can come out. When I opened the door, the first thing I saw was Barnaby. He was limping slightly, and he had a small cut on his snout, but he was wagging his tail. I fell to the floor and hugged him, burying my face in his fur. He had bought me the time I needed. The living room was a mess. Snow had blown in through the shattered back door, mixing with the glass shards on the floor. There was blood on the carpet, not Barnaby's and not mine. The police caught 2 of them in the woods behind the house. The other 2 got away in a car parked a street over, but they gave up their friends' names immediately once they were in custody. The man who had spoken to me, the one who kicked the door in, was the one the dog had bitten. They found him bleeding from a nasty calf wound near the tree line. When they pulled the mask off him, I didn't recognize him at first. But when the detective showed me his photo later that night at the station, It clicked. His name was Kevin. He worked in the IT department at my office. We had never actually spoken, not once, but I remembered him. He was the guy who would always be in the break room when I went to get coffee. He never said hello, never nodded. He would just stand there, stirring his coffee, watching me over the rim of his mug. I had always brushed it off as him just being socially awkward. If this story is making your skin crawl, make sure you are subscribed to this channel and hit that like button. Drop a comment below telling me if you've ever felt like someone was watching you. Your stories matter. When they interrogated him, they found a shrine to me in his apartment. Photos printed from my social media. Pictures he'd taken of me walking to my car in the parking lot. He had recruited 3 of his friends, telling them I was a rich executive who kept cash in the house just to get them to help him break in. But his goal wasn't money. He told the police he just wanted to have a Christmas dinner with me. We moved out of that house 3 months later. I couldn't sleep there anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I still hear him calling my name through the glass. Sophie. Where are you hiding? Sophie. Barnaby is okay. He is curled up next to me right now as I tell you the story. He saved my life that night. Kevin is in prison now, awaiting trial. His friends all took plea deals and testified against him. They'll be out in a few years for breaking and entering, but Kevin, they charged him with stalking, attempted kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit a violent felony. The detective told me that if they had gotten inside while I was still in the living room, it wouldn't have ended with a conversation. So if there is one thing I want you to take away from this story, it is this: trust your gut. If something feels off, if someone is staring too long, if they're asking too many questions, if they know things they shouldn't, don't brush it off. Because sometimes the person watching you isn't just awkward. Sometimes they're waiting for the perfect moment. Merry Christmas. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, you are a real one. Drop a comment and let me know which story scared you the most. And don't forget to subscribe for more true horror stories. Stay safe out there.